I recently found myself rewatching Infinity War and Endgame. Why you ask? You probably don't really care, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I've been eating a dress because I hate shopping and need new clothes. And eating goes faster if you're watching something at the same time. This reminded me of the problems the MCU has had sticking a landing post Endgame. Let's get into it. The MCU has a clear before and after, and before 2019, no one thought they could fail. Then 2021 came along and Black Widow didn't do as well as expected. Granted, there was a pandemic going on and people couldn't go to movie theaters to watch. But there are a few problems that had been in the MCU all along but are only starting to rise up out of Endgame's dust. The Infinity Saga was a fan favorite that helped these problems lay low for a while, and the pandemic helped even Marvel explain away Black Widow's performance rather than address them like they should have before they got big enough to swallow the MCU hole like they have now. The MCU began in 2008 with Iron Man and released 6 movies across 5 years, averaging about 2 movies per year, and this formula worked excellently. The MCU became the highest grossing franchise of all time, with many movies crossing the $1 billion mark. This sent many studios scrambling to start their own franchise to match Marvel's, and Hollywood as a whole gave up on indie movies and original ideas to combat comic books for the next $1 trillion franchise. Then came Marvel's Phase 4, which opened up with Black Widow. The critics were not falling over themselves praising the movie, and fans weren't tripping each other up to give Marvel their hard-earned monies like before, which probably shocked Kevin Feige. Then of course the trolls came up, shouting loudly about how it had failed because it had a female lead, forgetting that fans loved Florence Pugh's portrayal of Yelena Belova despite her gender. Trolls have been a consistent voice ever since, and this has had certain effects on subsequent MCU movies. The MCU has had quite the run ever since, and has even spread their wings to the small screen with TV shows like The Falcon and The Winter Soldier. The only problem is they have not been able to capture pre-Infinity War's success since. In fact, MCU movies now struggle to break even at the box office, which was once a problem Kevin Feige was completely unfamiliar with. Not stringing along any further, this will continue until Marvel fixes its core problems, which are bad writing, virtue signaling, and gaslighting. Let's look at each problem and discuss how they have become an integral part of the MCU. At the beginning of this year, I was so excited for Captain America Brave New World. So much so I even made a whole video about how Marvel will turn things around this year and become as great as it once was. And then I actually watched Brave New World. You could tell the actors really tried, but the story was so inconsistent it could drive the Mad Hatter mad. I never really follow movie news, press jack and so watch trailers because they disrupt my immersion into the movie, and trailers never really do anything for me. I once watched a BTS of Sebastian Stan's fight scenes for The Winter Soldier, and I now found it hard to believe fight scenes in any movie. All I can see is the choreography they rehearse over and over again. Because of this, I wasn't really caught up on any Brave New World news, but Marvel must have been panicking a lot after their previous bombs. They reshot scenes so much, even I eventually found out about it in a Reddit post. Watching Brave New World made Feige's increasing desperation so obvious. The movie was so patched up I was surprised when it ended, and immediately ran to Wikipedia to read the plot and make sure that was really the end. For some reason, Marvel showed everything in the trailer, so there was nothing left for the movie. And of course word of mouth travels, so Brave New World didn't do so well at the box office. It turned enough for me to think many people had been excited to watch it like I had. It would have served for Marvel to be a little bit more confident like they were pre-Endgame, because it seems that too many cooks they put in the project spoiled the soup. With Brave New World, I think Marvel caught the bad writing problem by listening to trolls. After The Falcon and The Winter Soldier, trolls poured online, going on and on about how they wouldn't watch a black Captain America, and for some reason, Marvel decided to listen to them, forgetting that trolls can be really loud but they don't speak for everyone. If the problem had been a black Captain America, Brave New World wouldn't have made as much as it did at the box office. I think many flocked to watch it but were disappointed in the disjointed story, and they spread the word, tanking the movie. I personally think Sam Wilson replacing Steve Rogers before Bucky makes more sense, because Bucky was still psychologically healing from the trauma of his horrifying Hydra experience after Endgame, so the more solid and reliable Sam Wilson is a better choice. When Bucky eventually takes the mantle after doing the work, I'm sure all of us fans won't be disappointed. The same bad rating problem is what destroyed Black Widow. They had Natasha Romanoff jumping off high-rise buildings without a broken bone, escaping fender benders without the tiniest scratch. Yes, these are fictional stories, but such writing forces viewers out of the world they are creating. It's hard for anyone to connect with it. And I know many action movies do unbelievable things, but they usually don't make it this crazy. In the Bond movies, for example, Daniel Craig usually jumped from high rises parkour style. There are usually many convenient balconies to shorten the jump. Black Widow jumped straight down without a scratch. If they had wanted Super Soldier Natasha Romanoff, the comics have a World War version who was Russia's answer to Captain America. The MCU instead went with the normal 1984 completely human Romanoff and simply forgot about it for some reason. And don't get me started on how horribly the defeat of the Marvel's villain was written. The entire movie follows her horror at the destruction of her home, and in a few unsatisfactory seconds, everything is over with and she's just gone. The Eternals is probably Marvel's worst movie. There's literally no point to it. The actors try their best, but their stories are not told well enough to connect with audiences. At first, I thought Marvel should have made individual movies to introduce the individual Eternals. Then I remembered the Guardians of the Galaxy were introduced in around 30 minutes, but still managed to connect so thoroughly with audiences they are still considered Marvel's best team after the Avengers. The Guardians of the Galaxy were simply well written while the Eternals were not. The MCU probably got too confident and stopped quality controlling their stuff, thinking fans were so stupid they'd watch every BS project Feige put out. Feige has had to learn the hard way that fans in fact have excellent taste. The Thanos still made some good money rather than bombing outright, probably because fans were still going off of Endgame steam. Now many more are biased against the MCU and have given up and won't even watch the good stuff. Thunderbolts dropped last month and Marvel has fixed all of the problems their overconfidence led them to make. They used little CGI in the movie, they wrote a good story, everyone who watched it has loved it, critics and audiences alike. Many just refused to watch it because Feige alienated too many with shoddy work. Even the Marvels was better than Ant-Man Quantumania, but no one wanted to spend their money on it after Quantumania's disappointment. Some said it's because the Marvels and Thunderbolts have new characters, but I again bring up the Guardians. A good story makes unknown characters known. I honestly get it because I too can't be convinced to watch a DC movie, not after how horrible Dawn of Justice was. I was so biased against the Snyderverse. I only kept watching because comic fans said DC has better comic book characters. I almost completely gave up on DC until I stumbled upon the animated universe and liked it. James Gunn has a new universe coming out soon, but he's into blood and gore, which I can't stand. Coupled with my bias against DC live action, I doubt I'll give them my money, so I get why Marvel fans won't watch Thunderbolts. Feige should probably be ready to make more movies that won't break even, in the hope that fans will eventually heal from situations like Secret Invasion and come back. Who knew overconfidence could be this destructive? The MCU is definitely learning this lesson by force. But writing is not a new problem in the MCU. I remember reading a Quora post that dismantled Civil War's plot in a few sentences, just after I had watched the movie. It was disappointing, but Marvel has been writing weak stories for so long, and it's only now more obvious in the absence of RDJ's wit. The MCU and Disney at large always come to mind whenever I think of the words virtue signaling. Endgame is a great movie, but it has probably Hollywood's most glaring example of virtue signaling. Yes, I'm talking that moment when Captain Marvel has to fly the gauntlet to the van, and these female superheroes come out of nowhere to back her up.
She's got help.
I'm sure even those who don't watch MCU movies have seen it because there are so many memes. The boys made fun of it by having their own girls get it done moment, but they made it work. Why? Because the boys, unlike Marvel, are not interested in pretending to care about women when they don't. In The Boys, Maeve, Starlight and Kimiko get together to stop Stormfront. They don't pretend to know or like each other. Queen Maeve sees Stormfront, a truly horrible person going after Starlight and Kimiko, and decides to help them because it's the right thing to do. After they have taken care of Stormfront, she goes on her way because she doesn't know them like that. Since the Me Too movement, Marvel and Disney as a whole have been trying to pretend that they care for women, but certain things can't be fixed. You have Disney refusing to pay Scarlett Johansson a small percentage of what they happily pay Chris Hemsworth, Evans and RDJ. You have Disney again getting young POC actresses, casting and abandoning them in race switch roles, and then not even making sure the movie is not drab and colorless like The Little Mermaid, or that Rachel Ziegler has a yellow dress that doesn't look like it was bought off of Amazon, which makes trolls attack these innocent actresses even more when the true villain is Disney. Because they are virtue signalers, they of course didn't realize how cheesy their Captain Marvel moment was until the memes started rolling in and the boys joined in on the fun. It could have turned out better if they had had these characters cameo in other movies like Bucky does in Black Panther. So naturally, his friendship with T'Challa, Shuri and Ayo doesn't feel too fake. Pepper Potts, however, never makes an appearance in any non-Iron Man movie, and suddenly she cares so much about Captain Marvel to be included in a for feminist scene when she's never met or even heard of Carol Danvers before. She's always given Tony Stark grief about his superheroing, and now she suddenly cares? Her caring about helping Iron Man makes sense, but the rest doesn't. It would have worked if they had kept it emotionless like the boys.
Just do get it done.
Virtue signaling is also why their black heroes seem hollow. Marvel and Disney don't really care about Anthony Mackie and Teyonah Parris. They think of them in a get-out type fetishization, so they deprive them of nuance, leading to stories that are weaker than the tea I drink. Unfortunately for the actors, they get the blame while Marvel walks away scot-free, with the image that they at least tried when they didn't. Marvel's final problem has had me rolling my eyes hard enough to dislodge them from my eyeballs so many times I should probably sue for physical distress. Marvel likes to gaslight us so much, and it most definitely is not cool. Even pre-Endgame, Marvel was always trying to force connections between their characters unnecessarily. Who remembers that moment in Infinity War where Thor calls Heimdall his best friend? No one? Just me then.
A best friend?
Stabbed through the heart.
Regardless, I almost twisted my eye muscles into oblivion because what? In all Thor movies, Thor is essentially the bane of Heimdall's existence. He keeps sneaking around, disobeying him to use the Bifrost for mainly selfish and childish reasons. I don't know if it's realistically possible to be best friends with someone who's constantly trying to get you fired, but the MCU of course tries to sell that right to us. I've seen video essays about movies that respect audiences, and they always remind me of the MCU because Kevin Feige obviously doesn't. Captain America Civil War had its plot problems, but they at least made it believable that the Avengers knew each other well enough to fight over the Sokovia Accords. I personally think it was odd that the powerful super analytical computer vision couldn't see that a divided Avengers was bad news, and even chose to side with the registration of superhumans when his access to information about humans should have told him we were too selfish to have a list of powered individuals to threaten and use whenever we wanted. But anyway, that was just bad writing and not gaslighting. A lot of the gaslighting before Endgame usually showed up when they were trying to tie in a character who wasn't involved in the present movie, probably because Disney didn't want to pay them to make a cameo. Then they'd make a big deal about their non-appearance for some reason. For example, Natalie Portman got fed up of Marvel movies and refused to return, but instead of pulling another love interest from the comics or retiring Thor love stories in general, they kept bringing her up and pushing these absurd narratives that were unnecessary for the plot. Like in Ragnarok, when Thor and Loki are on Earth looking for their father, some random human who for some reason decides to speak to these gods. One of them Loki, who she should have been afraid of given his past attempt to take over Earth. But this woman just randomly walks by Thor and cheesily teases him about Natalie Portman's character Jane dumping him.
Sorry to hear that Jane dumped you.
Like, how does a random stranger on the street know Thor's business? My eyeballs are in danger again here, but I soldier on, try to answer that nonsense and finish the movie, which I liked well enough despite that. The gaslighting comes up again in probably every Avengers movie. The MCU didn't make the Avengers as close as they should have, given the close-knit team they wanted to make. Steve Rogers and the team don't visit Tony Stark at all after Infinity War, and only look for him when they need him. This so-called close-knit team were actually surprised to see he had a daughter. Then in other scenes, they care so much what happens to each other it's enough to drive anyone insane. Tony even sacrifices himself for people who never came to see his baby. And Carol Danvers goes off to space and never ever comes back to see the best friend and her young kid, who they want us to believe she loves so much. Couldn't she have dropped by a few times there just to say hi? No one goes to help Thor in Endgame when he loses everyone he loves. Not even Steve, who the MCU insists is a very good person. Hulk and Rocket also only go to see Thor when they need him. Ridiculous. I don't know why the MCU keeps giving us details of just how much these characters don't like each other while insisting they love each other.
I swear, Thanos murdered my sister.
This gaslighting problem is because the MCU is the mouth that ate itself. They cannot keep making expensive movies to connect their characters better, so TV shows would be a good solution. Well, when the MCU had just started, Marvel TV came up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which would have been a good vehicle to tell these smaller lovey-dovey stories. Hawkeye and Black Widow could have met up with Coulson and his team to establish some connection to the Red Room, instead of Marvel lumping it all up in the Black Widow movie, or telling us how Black Widow and Hawkeye love each other so much without ever showing why. Kate Bishop and any of the smaller characters who are not having such a good time with their own shows would have had their introductions smoothed over better after a ride with our already liked Quick. But now, we're gearing up for Avengers Doomsday and fans haven't connected to any of the new characters, except the Thunderbolts, and they're not even that well given their box office outcome. The MCU will have to resort to more gaslighting, trying to sell non-existent relationships among the new Avengers when they haven't bothered to build them. Simu hasn't appeared in any other project, but Feige is definitely going to try to convince us that he cares so very much about Bucky. Yes, Bucky is a particular favorite of mine, sorry I mentioned him so much. Apparently he has Thai power and I'm a straight woman, so yeah. The saddest part is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had many Marvel fans hooked, and would have been the perfect vehicle to bring in new characters and keep them in the game. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents could have kept having their own lives and adventures, then teamed up with current and future MCU characters once in a while to keep the connections believable. I know I connected better with Lady Sif after her appearances in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. since the movies didn't tell her story properly, making her run in with Loki in the TV show great. But Kevin Feige decided at the beginning of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that he didn't like anyone else connecting to his precious world. Word on the street is they made Hydra destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. in Captain America the Winter Soldier to spoil things for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show during its very first season, when they could have used fans' love for S.H.I.E.L.D. characters to advance their own universe, because it seems movie people are bad at making TV shows. Most of Feige's TV shows are being poorly received overall, despite hiring truly excellent actors. She-Hulk, anyone? I understand fans were calling Tatiana Maslany a horrible actor after She-Hulk, when she brilliantly played 17 clones. Yes, 17 characters on orphan black. I blame the MCU ego for this. Like most fans at the moment, I too am not sure Avengers Doomsday will be good. Marvel seems to be wholly banking on the audience's nostalgia for RDJ, instead of building a good lasting story with united heroes like they did with the Infinity Saga. The MCU seems to have forgotten to land on a big picture and a villain to rally around like Thanos. They tried with Kang, but his story was so poorly executed there were no stakes, given his many alternate versions rendering his defeat in any movie moot. Characters now appear in their own movies never to be seen again. The Thanos happened and wasn't mentioned until Brave New World. It seems like a horrible time to team everyone up, but Marvel is now desperate and is actually going to attempt it. Obviously, no one learned anything from Zack Snyder's rushed teaming up. It might not end well because years after Spider-Man No Way Home, their video essays on how the movie overly banks on nostalgia, is not rewatchable and is glaringly empty. Many claim superhero fatigue and others claim wokeness. But if that was the case, shows like X-Men 97, The Boys or Invisible wouldn't have done as well as they have. Anyway, leave your thoughts in the comments. What have I missed? I haven't dived too deeply into the TV shows because after WandaVision, Loki and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the other shows didn't seem to have any particular reason for existing. Kate Bishop, Echo and the like have been swept under the rug. It's also sad really. So I thought it pretty pointless to harass them even more for this video. We could maybe explore the MCU's TV problems in another. But do you guys think the MCU can be saved, or is it a lost cause? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.